May 2020, I discovered something that changed my life, and it was mental health. The concept of improving your mind. You know, I'd always heard about mental health before this because more and more people used to talk about it back then, especially about guys of like, you know, like you guys should like talk about your feelings and you should open up and you should, you know, improve your mental health. And eventually I realized, oh yeah, like my mental health is really bad. I took a mental health test that was like some free one online. On Google, you literally just search like NHS mood assessments. And it was just like this free one that I took. It takes like 5 minutes. And it just gave me a ranking for depression and anxiety. And my scores were really high, especially the anxiety one was very, very high. I don't remember exactly when it was, but I realized that most of my eating and behavioral problems came down to anxiety. It came down to a little bit of like the depression symptoms that I had. Because when you feel anxious in your mind, when you have like these mental problems, of course you're going to be more likely to want to seek comfort in porn. Do you know, if you're having like negative thoughts, of course you're going to want to go and play some more video games because that's probably like the best thing in your life. That's probably the most stimulating, most distracting thing that you can do, which saves you from the harsh realities of the real world. And sometimes when you do pick up the confidence to penetrate the real world and, you know, say that, yeah, I'm going to lose some weight, I'm going to stop playing video games, you do make some progress, but you snap back because we will always go back to our baseline, our identity, our self-image, our mental health. So remember before we were speaking about the dopamine detox when people started to talk about it and it got really popular. Around May 2020, I realized that I was going to be one of the most extreme guys of the dopamine detox niche online. If you're an absolute OG of this channel, you know that this channel actually, when it was like 500 subs, 2K subs, it was actually mostly about dopamine detoxing. So you know what I did? I set this goal to grow this YouTube channel. It had 50 subscribers at the time. And I started to see myself as that disciplined guy who was on the dopamine detox. I started to see how I would appear in the eyes of other people. And usually people say this is a bad thing. Usually people say like, oh, you know, don't care what anyone else thinks. But for me personally, it genuinely saved my life. I started to see myself as that disciplined dopamine detox guy that I could like, you know, picture someone clicking onto YouTube and seeing my videos that you can go and look if they're still all there, seeing the videos I made 2.5 years ago in May 2020 where I'm talking about like I've been on a dopamine detox for 6 weeks. At the time, every single YouTuber who was talking about dopamine detoxing was talking about it in this clickbait way of like, yeah, just here's how to reset your mind in 24 hours. Here's how to change your life in 24 hours. I saw that and I was like, okay, these guys are literally just scamming everyone who's watching. You can't change your life in 24 hours. It's BS. You can't like cure your brain in 24 hours. And I said, okay, I know for a fact what you can do to save your life, and it's to get onto a dopamine detox, but not for 24 hours, not for a week, but just try and say, okay, well, this is my new life now. I started to see myself as a military style disciplined guy. And so I wrote down a timetable, my old like May 2020 timetable, where I'd wake up at 6 a.m. every single day and I'd just go out on a run and I'd go use the gymnastic rings, and when all the gyms were closed and I'd go work out in nature, and then I'd come home and do like 6 hours of work when I wasn't even used to doing literally 1 hour of work without distracting myself, and I'd eat totally clean and I'd meditate and journal. And you know, I started to see all these things in my mind and almost get this sense of pride for the potential that I had. I started to change who I was. I started to change how I saw myself. I was no longer this stoner pothead. I was no longer this guy who drinks half a liter of vodka on a night out trying to sleep with a 5 out of 10 girl who's also semi-drunk so that we can both like have like 10 minutes of like pleasure together. I started to see myself as a military style disciplined guy on a dopamine detox that other people were beginning to notice like, man, this guy's actually been around and he's been putting in the work. It's not that I did those things and then I started to, you know, feel like I was that person. I started to see myself as that person first, and then I started to do those things. Do you understand? I didn't move the rubber band this way. I moved it this way. It was my identity, my self-image, how I saw myself that changed everything for me.